We're back. Sarah, we're back. I think I start every podcast, we're back, like we went somewhere.
It is summertime, so there's a little travel and sabbaticals involved.
Oh, I know. And the kids are already back in school. Like they're going back tomorrow where I am. And your kids already went back, what, last Friday?
July 31st in
Oh,
Indianapolis
all
and
right.
or August 4th. Some of them started on Monday. So at the time of this recording, it's August 5th and kids are going back to school.
And, Paul and I were talking about that the other day. And we were out in the mountains. I said, now, it's been a few years since I was at school in the United Kingdom, but we actually don't start, we call them summer holidays, until maybe the end of June, sometimes into July, right? And so the idea of going back to school before September is just like, it does not happen. I mean, August, as you know, like, especially like in France and Europe, like they vacate and go to the beaches. So, Paris is always like closed down. Not always, but in August. But it was just this idea of like, but these are the summer holidays. You were just out on your paddleboard last week, and I'm trying to get mine in the water this week in between work. But it's like, wow, these kids are back in school in the heat of the summer, right? Across the country.
Yeah. My kids get out right before Memorial Day, and I don't love that only because June is pretty unstable, like with weather. Like
It
it's
is.
raining quite a bit, and August is our most stable weather. And actually, our state fair, which is down the street from me in Indianapolis, starts like this past weekend and
Oh,
runs for
man.
2 full weeks. And so all the kids are already in school, and you've got the
Yeah.
state fair down the street. What are we doing? I don't know. Anyway, I could go on and on about that. I grew up, going back to school around Labor Day, and that's the way to do it.
It
I still do it.
100%. Like occasionally you go right before and like, oh, we get 3 days
Hmm.
off. That's kind of cool. Like, get in, kids. Now you can get 3 days off so we can like regroup. And then they're ready. Like a big like what's the word in English? Breathe in. See right there. It came to
Yeah.
me in German, like deep breath in, einatmen, and then off we go. So anyway, all that to be said, we're actually going to pivot today because, well, are we going to pivot? What we're going to talk about is what should we be eating really? But what we were going to talk about that, which we'll do next time, is all about the mitochondria, like our energy plants and so much more. But this kind of bubbled up, right? Because were talking to your dad, and he said, "Well, I think you should talk about what should we really be eating. Like, what should we look for on a label, and what's good for us, and how do you even know? And should we be thinking vitamins and minerals and all the things, right? That's where we were going to head, and we might come back to that. But
Yeah.
then something came up yesterday for me, Sarah, and
You got a little fired up.
it got a little fired up, and we're going to talk about that. And it's going to unpack a lot of things around what should we be eating, which really bring in our work, our thoughts, diverging thoughts. And anyway, as anything in life, I have learned not to get fired up and post something or pick up the phone and call someone. And so I let that sit and macerate. Then I woke up this morning, August 5th, everyone, and I thought, no, that really bothered me. So you saw what bothered me. You want to talk about what
Yeah.
bothered me, and
I would
then
love to
we'll
talk about
unpack
it.
it.
Yeah.
Let's roll.
Since you're fired up, I'll say it. Um, I think it's one of those things, I'm gonna post this. I might delete it later. It's like the subconscious where I might
Hmm.
delete this later, but I just have I can't let this go. And so it was this reel put out by a colleague of ours who has been a leader in the functional medicine world. So just all respect and all encouragement in that area. But sometimes in the functional medicine space, we take something almost to the extreme where in conventional medicine, we've got a pill for every ill. In the functional medicine world, we've got a supplement for every symptom. And so that is the biggest challenge I see where even our clients and patients who've gone to a functional medicine practitioner also feel disillusioned by functional medicine and for good reason. So this was a reel by Dr. Mark Hyman. Again, full respect. He's
Hmm.
got amazing things to say. But he was talking about a morning smoothie, and it's his morning smoothie. So that's what he wants to do. But when we kind of talk about food as medicine, there was just quite a few supplements that went into his morning smoothie. And I know you were probably going cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching.
Mm-hmm.
We're hearing the money flow with some of those supplements. So, kind of what was triggering for you with that?
So what was triggering it is, and to make a point here, it was absolutely well intentioned. Like, get up. It doesn't take long to make a smoothie. Now, you and I don't always love smoothies either, so that's a statement in and of itself, right? And maybe I'm.
I love smoothies.
Oh, wait a
I
minute.
got
So
kids.
she loves
I'm a
smoothie.
smoothie girl, and when I'm not
I,
hungry in the morning, part of it's low appetite. I'm not very hungry in the
me
morning. What
too.
I would eat is if we don't feel hungry in the morning, drink your calories, drink your protein, however you can get it in. So I am a smoothie girl mostly because I'm a complex patient myself. So,
Well, you like
but you
smoothies
don't
because
love
you like
smoothies.
runny eggs, and so
I
you like
do.
that texture.
I like smooth, runny things, apparently.
We'll get to this. So, no, it's interesting. Remember you once posting, and there's several of us. I mean, growing up in Europe, and everything's changed. We just did not make smoothies, and I don't love sweet. So, remember me posting once, like, can you make a savory smoothie? And you said, yes, it's called soup, Amanda, which is true. But anyway, so sorry.
It could be
Sarah
a
loves
pureed
smoothies.
soup.
I think for me, part of it is it's like you could sometimes they're extreme. You could the if you don't structure them with enough fat and protein, they are an insulin inducing juggernaut. So I'm super careful with that. But
Absolutely.
so anyway, to this reel, take place in a beautiful kitchen. There's a Viking stove. I mean, right there. I would love a Viking stove, but okay, each to their own, right? That aside, so here was this. Hey, everyone should make a smoothie. It'll only take 3 minutes. It's true. It's really fast, providing you got a high-speed blender. That right there, not everyone does. If you have a low-speed blender or you don't have one, they don't come out too well. So that's number one. Probably aside from the point, but in front of the reel on the table was look at all the things I could put in my smoothie. Look at this. This is food is medicine, and I'm looking for the food.
The food,
Food
yeah.
is medicine, the best medicine we can eat. Truly, and some people don't like the idea of medicine. The information in food that our body understands is in food. Period, because food reflects nature and everything is physiologically compatible, which is why you don't have 2000% of B12 in food with a face on it. That which means animal products, right? Okay, so I was looking for the food, so I didn't see any. But what I did see, and this just inflamed me, was two products. And when I looked at the price of them, they were over $125. And that's all that we could see. One of them was a goat whey. We're going to unpack that goat whey. And the other was what a
The
Himalayan
buckwheat.
Himalayan
It was sprouted buckwheat, I think.
sprouted buckwheat. Okay,
Himalayan.
no problem with that. But can we unpack what we saw? Because you saw the reel again, well intentioned, but the word I took away from it was, I'm going to say it, privileged. It just was privileged because the cost of those two supplements alone, just those alone. Yeah, you can divide it up and say it's pennies per smoothie. That's not the point. You cannot advertise food as medicine and then say, look at these super chicy Christian Dior level supplements. It's not that you should be taking, but they're good for you. Well, so's food. What should I be eating? Let's roll with this. Let's roll with those topics.
Yeah, I think that really sets up the what should we be eating, and I'll go to the other extreme. I had a mentee, so I'm a mentor for IFNA, which is the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy, that a lot of dietitians are now have that board certification, and as do I. And so being an IFNA mentor for other practitioners who are wanting to practice in the nutrition space, one of them lives in Nepal. And so what do they have access to? What is feasibly even shipped? And it's a pretty corrupt postal system. Like if you ship something, it probably would get stolen or maybe even taxed to the degree that it would cost more than the actual product because they're exchanging money under the table and they're like, oh, you really want this? Well, you're going to need to pay extra for that. But also like if they have supplements available in their country, are they safe? are they what they say they are? I'm grateful for a lot of our labeling laws here in the
100%.
United States, but even some of our supplements, can either be adulterated, or if you're buying things on Amazon, it could be held in a hot warehouse. You don't know if those fish oils have oxidized, or even if that has been relabeled by something else and you've put, something you recognize and that's not really what it is. So, first of all, we don't necessarily recommend buying supplements on Amazon for that reason. You just don't really know for sure. But in other countries, like what are you going to recommend, to your clients and patients? So it was so good for me to think outside the box too, where it's like, no, what do you have access to? And also what's culturally relevant? So what's kind of normalized there as far as food. And so we got on the topic of tropical sprue, because a lot of her clients have H. pylori, or they've got a parasite. It's just normal to basically have a parasite because they're drinking the water there, and it's actually tropical in Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, which you think the Himalayas, and that's where the mountains are, and Mount Everest and everything, but the actual capital is tropical. And so as dietitians, as nutrition professionals, and in the functional space, it does need to be food as medicine. And we should be able to coach and counsel in the ways of food the best that we can, that is culturally relevant and respectful to, the area or the ethnicity of the individual that we're speaking with. So, yeah, you got to be able to do all of the things, I guess.
And so let's go back to what was in this smoothie. And it looked like, I don't know what the food was. I never caught that, but it was purple. So there was probably berries.
Blueberries, wild blueberries,
Wild
frozen ones.
blueberries. Okay. Okay. And they are delicious, right? But they can be very specific. They're grown in specific areas. Or if you're lucky, you can forage them. I remember foraging them in West Virginia. Can you forage them in Indianapolis in some of your
We
parks?
don't have a ton of wild blueberries. We tend to have raspberries or blackberries,
Yeah.
kind of Northwoods, Wisconsin-y. It's not too far,
100%.
but you think Maine wild
I
blueberries. But
think Maine.
if you're
Yeah.
buying them
And
frozen, they can be very expensive, the wild
they can.
blueberries.
And so you can use blueberries. You can go
Regular
to,
old blueberries.
you can use the frozen ones. They're perfectly fine. Um, yes. So yeah, wild blueberries. I mean, talking about getting the highest, hopefully, polyphenol content. Polyphenols are actually the best signaling molecules for our genes. They put food in a frequency that our body can understand. So okay. So there was that. I missed that part because I was still hung up with what was on the table. So we have a sprouted buckwheat. Okay, so buckwheat. I don't know if we could say it's ubiquitous. It certainly is central part for many cuisines, important cuisines, and ethnicities too. And it's also gluten free, right? So naturally gluten free. If you haven't tasted it, it has very strong flavor, right? It has almost like an iron flavor is what I relate it to. Did you cook with it at all, Sarah?
I have been using a living plate recipe for this toasted granola and using buckwheat in it. And when you toast it, it is chef's kiss.
Oh
Like,
my
it's
gosh.
really good. It's got like ginger and cinnamon with it. And so it's become a favorite granola ingredient,
Yeah, that's a great
putting in the
idea.
oven.
And you
So yeah.
can kind of, when I think about it, you can make like a tabbouleh kind of, you know, what am I saying, dish, like instead of using bulgur, which is
Yeah,
traditional.
couscous or wheat. Yeah.
Yeah, you could use barley sometimes. Some people use Israeli couscous, which will have gluten in it. We've made it with quinoa and yeah, the buckwheat. So one of the keys to buckwheat when we're looking at genes through the lens of genes is it contains a bioactive called rutin, rutin. So you can just eat the grain, people, or yes, you can soak it and cook it if you want, and you can throw it in as a whole grain and still get the benefit that we call it a food gene crosstalk. It's very potent in that what it can do is silence a pro-inflammatory molecule called NF-kappa B. So that's why you might see it as a potent anti-inflammatory. But you can eat it in a grain, people. You don't have to pay $52 for the supplement. If you want to, okay, but there's lots of ways to get the anti-inflammatory. And I don't know what's on the label of that product because I would never think necessarily to use that as a supplement. Would you, Sarah?
I've never seen it as a supplement powder before, and I've personally never used goat whey. I mean,
Oh, yeah, the goat whey.
it's like you're either going to use like a dairy whey or you're going to use a non-dairy typically. Like if you're reaching for goat, it's going to get a little bit more expensive or a lot more expensive.
Yeah, so the goat whey was like this huge package, right? And I didn't even know you could buy it. Now I'm not trying to be like ignorant. I just didn't even know. Maybe it hasn't made it to my store shelves here in Western Colorado. I'm going to go and look. I'm sure it's
You
here.
and I are open for products being shipped to us to try out, and
Yeah, goat whey.
if there's any
So
goat whey producers out there.
being married to a Greek, literally born to Greek parents, but adopted, I mean, goat milk is actually really, really important in its natural environment. So all these beautiful little goats, when you go to Greece and some of the islands, where instead of the sheep crossing the road, it's the goats. And of course, they're really lovely and all the things, and they're free foraging. But they're part of nature there. They are, goat meat is on the plate. And if they're milked, it's for it's not for yogurt necessarily, it can be, but it'll be for the cheese because feta, here's one of my issues in the United States, feta is traditionally made from goat or sheep or a combination. So
I don't
when
think I
you're
knew that.
married to someone who is casein intolerant, casein, not lactose. And so sometimes that's hard to figure out. This is where ethnicity comes in, or your roots, because you learn that if you're first generation from some cultures around the world, you've never been exposed to dairy or you've never been exposed to cow dairy. So goat is actually a useful option, right? But I have a sustainability issue with this too. Like goat, so we now, to produce a concentrated powder, are we now mass herding and raising goats to produce a supplement that is out of context of nature. So that's what I see. Although you'll have a laugh. So we work at a pet pantry like once a month, my husband and I. So it's kind of like a food bank. People come through and they'll pick up their food, but we also have a pet pantry. So we give away pet food to individuals who are having a hard time feeding their pets who want to keep them. So every once in a while, a car will come through and there's a goat in the back. That's their pet. So you peek in the truck and there's one of those big dog kennels, but there's a goat in there, not a dog. It's so fun. The goat's perfectly happy. He's like, yep, I like this trip.
I love that.
But I mean, now we're mass milking an animal that we know in the wild, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But
So
this,
where do we take that,
well,
Amanda?
I'm
What,
not done. I'm not
Yeah.
done with the goat ways. I get that. So let's talk about why, if you're making a smoothie, would you put in a concentrated powder, whether it's dairy or not? Why are we doing that? Why wouldn't we use like a whole protein, like a yogurt? Well, you could use cheese, I guess, if you wanted a yogurt or tofu. Why are we using concentrated powder, do you think?
I think shelf stability
Good
is
point.
one reason. Sorry, my dog sneezed. I don't know if you heard that.
That's okay. All pets are welcome.
Pets. We're talking about pets and he just sneezed. I think, yeah, I think shelf stability. And I think when people consider how much protein they should be getting, this goes to the RDA limitations. Maybe we've talked about this in the past, but the point 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight is like if you're not getting out of bed and you're not doing anything throughout the day, it really should be at least one, if not more,
Right.
1.25, 1.5 for my athletes.
Right.
So if they're considering the amount of protein per ounce or per dollar, they might consider a protein powder. So they might, Greek yogurt would be higher in protein than,
It
other
would.
yogurts would be. So yeah, there's different ways to go about that, but then some are also flavored. So if you wanted something that was chocolate and you added blueberries to that, or you wanted a chocolate and peanut butter and banana, and you added that chocolate protein powder, or you went a vanilla direction. So it kind of depends what fits, people's lifestyles
And that's actually a really good point, because when I think about the smoothie that was being made, he was using a plant milk, which is not going to have the protein in it. So
no,
that would be why that was
that's the
put in there.
biggest
I could
challenge.
see
Yeah.
that. But all protein powders are not benign when we look at the whole person, and we're looking at that protein through the lens of genomics. This is where the conversation changes. And it's, you and I deal with people who have complex issues and not, right? Some are here to to optimize performance for you. So when I saw the whey protein, I'm like, well, why whey? What is in whey? So should we unpack the whey and why whey protein may have been chosen over goat milk? Why? What's in there in the amino acids or in the nutrient information that we're interested in?
Yeah, the branch chain amino acids to help build muscle and recovery. And, Mark Hyman had surgery. So this is like post back surgery.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that repair side of things, the research is pretty clear that whey, can optimize recovery. It can help rebuild muscle or to build muscle. So that at least we have research to back that up, utilizing whey. Now, the way in which you use it, whether that's directly from the source or from a powdered version of it, that's, the accessibility there needs to be taken into account.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a complete protein source, and it is higher in these branched chain amino acids, which is interesting, and it's why whey isn't necessarily for everyone, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So branched chain amino acids are anabolic, right? They help build muscle, like insulin too. And we're looking at two very, very different pathways, and I think this is important. So these branched chain amino acids drive a pathway called mTOR. And anyone who's in the biohacking, health span, and optimization community is going to be interested in this. So they drive mTOR. mTOR is anabolic. It will build things and not just protein, right? It is a builder. But if you're using something like a whey protein to drive muscle repair, etc., but then you're also intermittent fasting at the same time, that is the opposite of mTOR. So we have like an anabolic process, that's mTOR, which can also, it's an interesting pathway, because like I said, what also drives that pathway is insulin. Insulin is a fat storage hormone, people. So at the same time that we may be building muscle, we may be building fat storage. We don't know. It depends on the individual. So think about that. When you turn on mTOR, you cannot at the same time turn on autophagy, which is involved in stimulating energy. It stimulates your mitochondria to access your fat stores and your glycogen, if you've got some, and your protein, if you don't have anything. And so that actually breaks down everything you're trying to build. And so you may be putting in your whey protein in the morning, right, for whatever reason to build, but then you're going into a 16-hour intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating regimen because that's also good for you. What are you achieving? It's an
Yeah, and
interesting.
is there a net negative there
Is there a net
somewhere?
negative, right? It's like, do we know what we're doing when we're using these supplements? All with good reason and good questions. The other thing that really struck me with whey, and this is where the nitty gritty of the work we do in genomics is so important, is whey is a super good source of glutamic acid. Okay. And then we think, okay, glutamic acid, what can we make from that? Glutamate, glutamine, these are healing. Glutamine is a healing molecule, right? That's what we think about. But it also can biotransform to glutamate. Now, if you have a child or a spouse who like you constantly pulling off the ceiling, or they're running a million miles a minute, or they've gone down a rabbit hole, like we're describing a certain personality and behaviors, like they're down a rabbit hole and they'll appear like at 2 a.m. They're saying absolutely focus on solving something, or maybe they're on a video game or what have you. Whey protein may not be your friend because glutamate is an excitatory. It's an excitatory neurotransmitter. There are some people and some kids in this world, ask their parents, who do not need any more excitement, right? We don't need to pull the kids off the ceiling or have meltdowns in grocery stores because their glutamate levels are super high. So glutamate has a pal, right? It's its cousin. It's a member of the opposite side of the family that's called GABA. GABA. And glutamate is fine. We all need a stimulant, but some people don't need an inadvertent stimulant because biochemically they can't detoxify, or they can't transform it to GABA, either because they have a nutrient deficiency, often the case, or there's genes that are inefficient and nutrients that are deficient. And that is a formula for a pretty disruptive mealtime. Right, Sarah?
Yeah, especially, some of the nutrients needed to transform glutamate to GABA being B6 and magnesium. And magnesium is, we burn through that pretty quickly because we're, bouncing off the walls and on the ceiling. And so
And zinc
anxious.
too. And zinc too. So those three really drive that equation. And if you haven't heard us discuss this before, because we look at a lot of brain hormones, a lot of neurotransmitters and dopamine and serotonin, B6 is probably the nutrient in most demand in both pathways. And yet if we're able to run accurate lab testing, B6 is not easy to test efficiently, but it almost always is going to be bottomed out. Let's say if we're looking at an organic acid test, just as a reference, when I'm looking at inefficiencies, I don't know about you, Sarah, that one is almost always bottomed out.
Yeah, I am seeing that as well. And I do have a few clients, we've run neurotransmitter testing, and they've had glutamate, off the
I've seen some
chart.
of them. Yep, off the chart.
Histamine exacerbates all of that. And I'm seeing elevated like BPA levels that are sort of churning into some of the neurotransmitter stuff and hormone stuff. So then you've got BPA, high estrogen dominance, and then glutamate is high. And so I'm seeing this boom, boom, boom kind of pattern with some of those clients. And we've all got microplastics, so
Yeah, we all.
congratulations. I think I was at a Jeff Bland's conference back in June in Schaumburg, and I don't know if it was him or someone else that said we've got about a credit card's worth of microplastics in our frontal lobe. So great.
It's true, and depending on how well you detoxify things, it's a much higher load for some people than others. And actually, I want to come back to that environmental piece too. But so not all food, when you eat food in its original state, unless you are intolerant, which we see, like with gluten or peanuts or what have you, it's going to be physiologically compatible. So you can get the benefits of whey in a natural way in food in its natural state is a point. But when you take it out of context maybe at a concentrated level, which is okay if you know what you're trying to achieve, but a highly concentrated level is not without consequences. And of course, we can see that in genomics by testing. When we can see the genes, we can connect that to symptoms and behaviors and say, that's probably not a good choice, even though it's put into a product with intention, right? And I think that's an important part, that all supplements have a consequence. Anything that is taken out of the natural matrix has a consequence. Mm-hmm. And that consequence could end up in your urine or your stool, fine, but not for everyone.
Yeah. very complex to take something that seems so simple and so benign, and what's the unintended consequence of that.
Exactly,
We see that so
exactly.
often.
So that's kind of what fired me up a little bit. And it wasn't about like hitting on the Dr. Hyman at all. It was like, wait a minute, that there were just so many layers to what I saw there that the intent was good. Yeah, make a smoothie, get your blender out. Yeah, if you got one. And even some of the foods that we're asking people to buy to put in a smoothie can be, wild blueberries are not cheap, right? Regular
Mhm.
blueberries may also be more expensive. And I worked with a produce guy probably 25 years ago. He was just fantastic. And Mark was his name. And what his job was actually to go around to natural food stores around the country. Back in the day, this was in the early days of Whole Foods, and Wild Oats was the competitor back then that is no more. And he helped them do their produce displays, which what a great job, And
Yeah, I would
yeah,
enjoy that.
it was fantastic, and he was, everything he did was sustainable and organic, but he wasn't necessarily swayed on that. It was just that was his space. But a lot of it was helping to train staff. And one of the things he said is like, to the produce people, your job is really important. Your job and what you say to a customer may be the first and last time they ever taste something. So get it right, sell with
Mm,
integrity. It was really important. But the reason I mentioned Mark is because he actually came on the road with me to do some workshops with health professionals. And one of the things we did, we were in Minneapolis, I never forget, and we actually would work in grocery stores. So we would use their meeting room, and we would give the health professionals a challenge to go into the produce department and say, okay, here's the government guidelines. Here's what you need to put on your plate. This was back in the days of the pyramid, right? So, how many fruits and vegetables are you supposed to eat? But guess what? Here's the average budget a family of five has to spend on food. Now go out and follow your guidelines, and you bring back a grocery cart full of the food that you're saying you need to eat to be healthy, and you make it work. And it wasn't said like that, but that was what it was. It was a reality check, and they couldn't do it.
yeah. In
They
my
could
dietetics
not do it.
program, we had to create like a week of a meal plan on a SNAP budget
Yeah, that
for
was it.
a
It was on a
family,
SNAP budget.
and it was like $1.50
Exactly. If you
a,
were
a
lucky.
meal.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
meal.
And I know some of the, long-term care facilities, they cut budgets too, where it's like super, super cheap, and even having real butter feels like a luxury. Everything's margarine, and so you're missing some really important components for the diet
Yeah.
to, just be in a long-term care facility when you don't have choices. So, what do you shop for when you don't have choices and when you don't have access to some of these expensive supplements? We got to strip it down to, okay, what should we be eating? What should your plate look like? And is it accessible?
100%. And we're actually going to pivot to that. One of the great take homes from working with Mark when we did those, that exercise, which we repeated in several cities, was that it's okay not to have all the variety and all the colors. If something is in season, like corn's going to be coming in season in the Midwest, watermelon is in season, all the melons are in season. What he said to the health practitioners is just like, then use that. It is okay to eat within the season because it's going to be cheaper. And it was such a great take home. I mean, not always. Maybe that has changed too. Sometimes we don't even know what season we're in. The season is ubiquitous. But, there is a season for citrus, which is so dynamic. And it's only 6 months of the year. And then, like, we rotate through the spring. And then the summer has its own vegetables, right? Anyone who's a grower has its own fruit. And then the fall, depending on where you are, it's root season, right? You get into your crucifers, your roots, and then the cruciferous vegetables again come through there. And if you fall in this season, it's actually a great way to get replenishment and variety. It doesn't have to be 20 colors on the plate every day, because I find that overwhelming. Don't you, Sarah? It's like, that is really hard to do.
It is really hard. It's also like I didn't have time to go grocery shopping, so what do I have? What's in the freezer, that you can pull from? I think a better challenge would be getting 30 different plant foods in a week.
If
You
you
know,
can.
not
Yeah.
necessarily every day, but I'm like 30. Yeah, I think 30 in a week, that's reasonable. And plant foods, is not just your colorful like fruits and vegetables, but think about your beans and your
Yeah.
nuts and seeds too. Like those are plants as well.
You said 30 different foods, right? Or 30
Hmm.
different plant foods.
Plant foods.
Yeah, which
Hmm.
includes your nuts and seeds. But even if you can't do that, maybe just a rotation every day. But again, I think we have to be so realistic, right, about what is attainable. Because cheap is cheap for some people. What is all the colors and all the variety in the world if you only have so many dollars. So I think we're both mindful of that. But it does come back, some of the best, most robust foods on the planet happen to be legumes or pulses if you're outside the United States. I mean, they are so nutritionally robust, including folate. I think we talked about that. All right, so let's kind of pivot then. Sarah's dad, I know you're going to listen to this. We're going to answer your questions on another podcast. So Jessie, she said, I really want to know this, but I think what's useful, and you brought this up, Sarah, was, okay, so if you only have so much money, which foods are really useful? Let's talk about on a budget. We can't afford supplements. Even many people can't. They are expensive no matter what. And yes, you can dry your own food and all the things, but let's be realistic in a grab and go society and two parents working, et cetera, and kids are in sports and camps, et cetera.
Or single
What?
parents and they've got to feed their families and it's
Yeah,
rough.
and you got a picky eater, like all the things, right? And the picky eater can be an adult, by the way. Let's give the kids a break. It can be an adult. Many times it is. So what guidance can we give? Like always have this in your pantry because this is a benefit. Like what are a couple of things you would say, or however many you want to say?
I think always having some frozen vegetables in your freezer because they are flash frozen during peak,
100%.
ripeness,
Yeah.
low histamine. So people who are pretty sensitive to things, because if you buy something fresh, let's say broccoli, the vitamin C in broccoli is going to degrade, the longer that it sits in the fridge. And if you can utilize something that's frozen, it's usually going to be cheap. You can find them on sale. So I think having a couple of things in your freezer to utilize. I'm a little bit gifted in the let's look at what's in the pantry and what's in the fridge and I'll make something amazing. And my parents will come over for dinner and they're just like, so how did you make this? What's the recipe? And I'm like, well,
What's up
I
here?
I know the thing that I've learned, and this is where I'm grateful that my husband is a vegetarian because I grew up in, a Midwestern home where you got your meat, you got your side, probably a casserole is involved. But because I was cooking for a vegetarian, I had to go, okay, how am I going to do this? How do I like incorporate all these vegetables? How do I get enough protein in? And now I have to like go, okay, how do I feed my growing two boys who are eating full adult portions now and also feed my spouse? So,
Yeah.
I have to like break things up a little bit. But yeah, I think even like a canned tuna, having that is often either on sale or accessible. Wild Planet, if you're maybe more sensitive to mercury, you can find that in Costco in packs. What can you get at Costco that you can get in bulk and hang on to and store some of those things away for growing families or single families?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say even like Kroger has sales all the time too. So if you're able to utilize, I use like Kroger Pickup. So you can use the coupons within the app and they can automatically apply as opposed to, how you used to like sit and look at coupons and
Oh
clip
yeah.
them out and take them in. You don't even have to do that anymore.
Oh
And I'm
wow.
so grateful for that. So if you have like a local grocery store that if you're a single parent, you can do your grocery shopping and pick it up and it doesn't cost you anything. So you could utilize Instacart for someone to deliver it, Or you could find your local place that will do the grocery shopping for you with an app, and then you can go pick it up. Your kids
Yeah,
are in the car. If you got little babies, you don't even have to set foot in the store,
exactly.
which also keeps you on task. And so you're not, oh, that looks nice, or what's this new product, or, if you don't buy it, if you kind of spend a lot of time in the middle aisles of the store, a lot of those are going to be on, the more processed foods. Not that you can't have them, but if you go shopping when you're hungry, you're going to be like, oh, the cookies and the crackers and all those things sound so delicious right now because you're hungry and your brain works, operates on glucose. So I like to validate patients. It's like you've waited too long to eat your meal and you weren't sustained long enough and now you're starving and your brain is like, hey, we need some gas up here. And so of course you're going to crave carbs.
Yeah, exactly. For so many reasons. Yeah, gasoline and also mood balance too, because serotonin is like, hey, I don't like being at both ends of the spectrum. Hangry, angry,
Angry.
moody. Give me something, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like that. So can of tuna, frozen vegetables. You mentioned Costco. It might be Sam's Club or wherever,
Yep.
but when they have cases of beans, it can be refried beans. Okay, but a case of garbanzo beans is like you've hit gold there because they can just be tossed with the tuna, and if you defrost and however you heat up those frozen vegetables, you actually have dinner. There's nothing wrong with that. I always told dietitians back in the day, learn how to make a vinaigrette from scratch. Because if you
Mm,
know how to make a sauce, or it could be like a tahini sauce, if you know how to make those things, it doesn't take much. You just measure and shake. Kids can do this when they're old enough, right? Measure and shake, and then you can literally open cans, reheat or those frozen vegetables, and you can have dinner. I mean, you don't need a recipe like you were asking, like, well, maybe is there a simple to go recipe? Like, you don't have to cook with a recipe. You do not have to know how to put things together. But going back to Costco, like a case of garbanzo beans or chickpeas or black beans, ace. They're not for everyone. But you talk
mhm.
about firing up protein, fiber, and as many nutrients per bite as possible. Those are your low cost, high return on ingestion ingredients. So I totally agree, Sarah. Canned tuna, however you can get it,
Mhm.
no judgment. Like it's just, we're looking for protein and protein and sustenance for our bellies.
Yeah, and I do have athletes who travel to China and their bodies are have to be functioning, so they can't sample the local food and hope that their stomachs are gonna make
Yeah,
it. So actually, Wild Planet makes these canned like small meals that have tuna in them and beans and maybe corn or a pasta. And so I'm like, throw some of those in your bag so that you're not purely living on protein bars, but you can like have something else. And they're just literally, heat. You don't even have to heat them. You just open it up and eat it, and
that's a
the
good
sauce in
idea.
it's pretty good. So people who are backpacking, or camping, or maybe just need to leave something in their gym bag because they're going between work and trying to exercise, like have a plan. My friend Lindsay Langford says this to her athletes all the time: a fail to plan is a plan to fail. If you don't have a plan on, well, what if I get stuck in traffic and I haven't eaten dinner yet? I get hangry and then I overeat on something else. If you don't have it with you, you can't eat it. So I'm lifelong the Girl Scout on my volleyball team who's always got a snack. I've got
Yeah.
a snack in my bag. If someone else is hungry, I'm like, oh, I've got this. I've got a snack for you. Don't worry. I'll play the
Yeah.
team mom and the real mom. But I
Right.
think the sheet pan meals are probably the easiest thing to do if you don't have a lot of, if you don't have the blender and the Instant Pot or whatever. Chicken thighs are way cheaper and more nutrient dense than a chicken breast. And so, take those frozen vegetables and some chicken thighs, whether that's frozen or, fresh or whatever, and have some seasonings on hand. They can be dried seasonings, but utilize those
100%.
too. So, so simple. And I think we've just gone to like lemon juice and olive oil to go with your vinaigrette, like just simple, lightly
Simple.
tossed greens. Literally lemon juice, salt, pepper, olive oil. That's it.
And if you want to expand that too, so if you can actually put mustard in there, so that gives it another bite, right? So it's like 3 parts oil, 1
Like a
part vinegar or
Dijon
juice, huh?
or like a Dijon
Like a
mustard.
Dijon mustard. Yeah, don't use the, yeah, pick a decent mustard. That's what I would say here. Yeah, decent mustard, please. But you can get those on sale. It doesn't have to be a premium mustard, but that mustard. Then you can actually put dried herbs in there, like thyme if you want. It has to sit a little bit. Yeah, if you got fresh, great, but we're trying to be realistic here that not everyone has access to everything, or it's you look at the refrigerator like the parsley was in there a little too long. So yeah, so I agree with you. And you know what's interesting, my husband, so his mother was French, and so he's a very good cook. He learned to watch his mother and cook. So her vinaigrette, he was just making it last night. I put a raw egg yolk in there. It's just a whole, no, it's an egg yolk that goes in. So that's acting as an emulsifier, right? It's binding things.
Oh.
But he said he left it last night. He put the egg in and ran to do something. He said, I better hurry up and stir the vinaigrette because otherwise it's going to burn the egg. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, my mother always said if you didn't stir the egg yolk really fast, it would burn. And of course, what he's talking about is the vinegar would denature the protein. So it had to be the whole egg when I'm thinking about it, not just the
Like
yolk.
curdling it.
Yeah, curdling it. So he's like, oh, look, it'll burn the egg. So I said, that has to be something your mother said to you in French. He said, yeah. So I thought that was cute. But, they're adding in an egg, then you're adding like this other little bit of protein. Everything counts, right? Although eggs, we're mindful too. The cost is all over the place again. We just noticed. So I guess my addition to that, what you started out, and I think we agree, is, one of the best food-based medicine on the planet, if not the best, is olive oil itself. It just is. As you've heard me or us say so many times, when you put that under a food microscope, it blows everything out of the water. Other than the only other food I can think of are sea plants or seaweed. Now, of course, that is expensive. It's not part of this conversation, but it is, or it can be, if you want it to be. But that is just an incredibly robust food it's been used for centuries, right? But it's become very vogue here in the West. So those two foods always come to mind with like, how do you, non-food, non-supplement based foods that are available, not accessible to everyone, but olive oil, I would say, is like, it's adds satiety, but it's nature's natural supplement.
And if you're in the grocery aisle and there's 50 bottles of olive oil on the shelf, what would you pick, Amanda? What do you recommend?
If you're lucky enough, you're gonna really pick the one that's in the dark glass bottle or in a can if you can. And they might be more expensive, they may not, because what you're doing is protecting them from the light. Therefore, regardless of where that olive oil's come from, processing aside, because that's a major issue we may or may not know about with olive oils, I'm going to choose something where at least the liquid gold has been protected from the environment to some extent. So those are actually my kind of environmental criteria over anything. Yeah, versus going for a brand. If I were going to go for a brand, I would probably choose Spectrum still. It's changed hands over the years, but that would be a go-to.
Yeah.
It's
And single origin is usually what I
you
recommend because
can, right?
otherwise
The
you can't
blends.
control the oxidation in these three European countries before they all came together. And maybe they were harvested at different times. You don't
Yeah,
necessarily know that either. So if you can get a single origin,
yeah,
it's the good, better, best scenario. It's like,
kind of.
you know, olive oil is pretty much all I cook with, and I really appreciate that the polyphenols protect it even at, cooking higher temperatures because we've got heat smoke points, for
Yeah.
oils, and I feel like I've gotten away from avocado oil more and just kind of gone back to olive oil. We've processed it the same for thousands of years. Like why would I ever go away from that?
You can always add butter in the pan to raise the heat, right? I see Paul do that all the time. Like he'll combine both, like classic, to raise the heat. Yeah, but I don't use olive oil. If for whatever reason we're going to sear something or do something at a higher heat, obviously, like in a wok, we're not going to use olive oil. But we would, in that case, I may use avocado oil in that case.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so
Yeah,
this year we're
absolutely.
not rigid, but we are very food focused. And I would say, I mean, I'll speak for myself and you speak for yourself. I do use supplements in my business. I do take a minimal number of supplements because I'm using them to take my genes that last quarter mile. You know, sometimes we have gene inefficiencies, so things change in our life where we need some bolstering from supplements. Or with my patients or my clients, we're using supplements to get the gears to grind, you know, to kind of get their body back to efficiency. Then you can titrate down or change the regimen, but there's not very many that I'm using, and they're always strategic. And I can always say, and my clients can always say, this is why I'm taking this supplement. This is why I'm taking this.
Mm-hmm.
Do not leave home
Absolutely.
without understanding that. What about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I use supplements as well, and I try to keep them to a minimum. I always feel the need to apologize to my clients that, we're working on an infection or a mold protocol, and I'm like, I am so sorry. Like, there unfortunately will be a few supplements
To
extra
help.
for a
Yeah.
couple of months, but this is not the long term.
Mm-mm.
It should never be long term. So trying to have a process for those clients that do need a little bit of extra that are kind of above and beyond all of that. But yeah, trying to do as much with food as we can. But what do you do when you're super fatigued and you can't cook and you can barely get out of bed, let alone
Yep.
meal plan for the week? I do have a
100%.
CSA, like I'm part of CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture, and I've been a member of one for almost 10 years now. And ours is about $350, an extra 100 for like delivery for 25 weeks of
That's
produce.
incredible. I mean, that's
That's
just
incredible.
it's
And like some of it, like it's, you've got we have to take our own, cloth bags or whatever to pick up, and it's full. And like
yeah.
that's every single week on Wednesdays, between 4 and 8 o'clock, I go, pick up my
Yay.
CSA, and they have extras that you can add on, like
Yeah.
eggs or flowers that are, wildflower bouquets for $10 that are, huge and beautiful. And so the stuff that's in season are usually what I'm cooking. And
Hmm.
some of it I'm not as familiar with. And I'm like, well, better figure out
You'll
how to
just
use that
learn.
because,
Yeah. It doesn't
it's
always
in
work,
season.
but you try. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, you can easily spend, $200 a week at the grocery store. So if I can
Oh.
go to the grocery store less by using CSA that's local, in season, nutrient dense for all of those reasons.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's way more economical. And a lot of places will do, a payment plan for you instead of paying it all up front, or you just realize every spring, this is what we're doing, and
Exactly.
getting all of our produce from May to November, basically, for all of our veggies. And so, yeah. How about, Amanda, can I ask you if you are traveling, flying somewhere, what do you eat? You're in the airports, what do you bring grab and goes with you? What do you look for at an airport to eat?
Yeah, the which
Or
way?
when you get
First
or
of
when you
all, I
get
know
to a
what
new
airport
city.
I'm flying into. There are some airports that are absolutely spectacular, you know, and
Mm,
if you're able to be in an airport lounge, that is a whole different ball game. So if I know how I'm flying, where I'm flying to, usually I know if I can eat at the airport or not. I'll always have food with me. Like kind of like your trail mix, what have you, but beware that if you're flying internationally, you cannot go into foreign countries with many of you have to be aware, right?
they
So
can't
that
be fresh things.
can't
So,
be fresh.
yeah.
Even
Yep.
nuts and seeds, you have to be careful, right? Especially if you're coming back
Hmm.
into the
If they're
US.
like roasted, maybe. Hmm.
Yeah. So, but when I get to a city, if I'm there on business, a lot of times I'm kind of, like you and I had chatted about this. I agree with your husband. I'm actually going to go to a grocery store and I'm going to supplement what I'm going to eat from there. The one thing I don't like about staying with hotels, and it's a point of divergence between my husband and I, is like, hey, we're at a hotel, we should eat out. I'm like, but I don't want to eat out breakfast. I want to
Mm,
be able to eat in. I want if I'm going to eat a yogurt or a croissant, depending on where I am, I like to go to a grocery store and pad out what I'm eating, and then reduce the amount I'm eating out. A lot of times, particularly if I'm in the United States and traveling, I will do that. Internationally, less so, just because of time or why I'm there. But We have very good grocery stores. So yeah, I'm going to grab and go. And they have very good salads. You know, you choose, right? Sandwiches less for me. Maybe there's a wrap. Maybe there's something from their deli or fresh food counter where they put things together. And because I used to travel a lot and teach from a culinary perspective, I was, you can go to like a Whole Foods or equivalent, like all grocery stores are going to have a fresh food counter. And I will just say, I'll take that salad and that salad and that salad, and I actually would eat
Yeah.
in my room. I was very happy, and I'm still
Hmm.
very happy to do that.
Yeah, and like if you have a hot bar and a salad bar, like my kids love variety and choices, and they
Yeah.
sell it by the weight. And so let's say you eat out with your kids and they're like, "Oh, well, I ate this, but I didn't like this," and you've spent 10 or
Yeah.
$15. Like even kids' meals are getting pretty expensive now, and then my oldest is definitely eating adult portions and he loves shrimp, and so he's going to eat me out of house and home with the seafood department. But if you can go and they can pick what they want and you give them guidelines and you're like, hey, make sure you pick two different
Yeah.
veggies and then, have fun with everything else. Where's your protein? And, it's an educational opportunity. But yeah, my husband travels a decent amount for work and that's his thing. He's like, I go to the grocery store and I get a couple of things and assuming there's like a fridge
Yeah.
in your
Assuming you have
hotel
that.
room or whatever. But even if there isn't, then plan for that meal that you're just gonna. There's so many good grab and goes at grocery stores
I
now
agree.
with the wraps, as you said, and salads with protein and, vegetables and beans. And so I think that's a really underutilized thing when we travel. We just kind of go, well, I need to go through the drive-through. Or the
Right.
fast food or whatever. And there's a time and a place for some of those things as far as access, but it's almost just as much money, if not less, to go to the grocery store and pick something from
I
their grab and go
agree.
department.
And you don't have to tip anyone at the grocery store. Not that I'm not
Yeah.
against tipping, but you don't. There's 20% right there. And
Hmm.
like you said, if you've got kids, you can control it more. You don't have like wasted food. And also you kind of know what you're going to be eating. You don't necessarily know from one town to the next who's on the line in the kitchen. As my husband always says, look, they're looking for chefs. We're not going to eat here. We don't know who's cooking. That's just one of his things. I'm like, that's it. Doesn't mean to say they can't cook, Paul. They're just like they're missing someone, but you don't know. If you worked in a restaurant, it's incredibly frenetic. If there's somebody missing, so you don't know the food quality from one day to the next. You just don't. So
Hmm.
yeah. So I'm kind of like I like the local store option.
Yeah. The travel tips are really helpful. And also, let's assume that your plane gets delayed and you don't have time on the layover to grab something. Make sure you have something like with you, or you're going to regret it. You're going to regret
Yeah,
it.
you will. You will. And then you're going to be trying to buy something on board, which is usually not very palatable. you know?
Hmm.
Yeah, and very expensive too. So
In the grocery store, what are things that you would avoid
things that I avoid,
or
anything that's
or
been,
anything on labels?
oh yeah, usually anything that I avoid. And now again, I grew up in a different space, right? I am not going to eat pre-cooked meat, like things that I know have been fried and maybe sitting there under hot red lights, because I just don't know how long they've been there. It's not about
Mm.
intention or anything. I just don't know. I am not a deli counter girl because I grew up in a different country, where deli, especially in France, is just a different thing for me. So I don't do the deli thing. I don't have sandwiches made myself, me personally, in a grocery store. But I do veer towards what's fresh and available. So it's not about what do I avoid. It's more about what am I pulled towards, because we all come from a different place, right? So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, I struggle with a lot of the breaded and fried stuff. I've just never. My husband and I have this phrase like, if I've eaten something, I want to be thinking, man, I'm so glad I ate that. And if I can't say that, if I'm like, ugh, like I either feel bloated or I feel
hmm,
inflamed or whatever, like, is that worth it? For me,
yeah,
it's not. And so I don't have a gallbladder anymore, so that's part of it. But, like Thai food, I love it. But if
hmm,
I'm eating a greasy pad Thai, I am going to feel it. And
yeah,
digestive
yeah.
enzymes are a must.
Yeah, that's your thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's less about what to avoid because we don't know where people have been in their lives and more about what can you gravitate towards. And, a piece of fruit doesn't cut it for everyone. If you're hungry, eating an apple doesn't cut it. So you don't feel shamed at all. Sometimes it's really good in kind of prepackaged like hummus with some feta and olives, right? Like kind of like a snack pack that you can recognize, and decent crackers or something like that.
Hmm.
There's nothing wrong with a loaf of bread, cheese if you eat it, or hummus, even the prepackaged stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. And grapes and berries, something like that. Um,
Yeah, my favorite thing to look for in like a gas station is like prosciutto wrapped mozzarella
there you
sticks.
go, right?
Honestly,
Right.
like I love prosciutto. It's so good. I could eat it for breakfast
No,
and
I do
snacks
too.
and stuff. But yeah, even gas stations normally have these little sticks of either it's provolone or mozzarella wrapped with prosciutto, right next to the pickles, usually at the
And the
gas
potato
station.
chips around the corner of it. Yeah. I actually think gas stations, particularly more like the bigger, like the big interchanges, you're going to see much bigger gas stations. You can rummage through there and find stuff. It's interesting. You can find like the sunflower seasons. The nut section is better. It's not
Yeah.
all perfect and premium. They're not premium stores, but you can rummage through.
Yeah, the hard-boiled eggs next to like the hummus and pita chip, snack pack
And
like you were
fruit
talking about.
cups too.
The
So
fruit
it is
cup.
all possible. Of course, you can pack that stuff too, right? But we all get caught out, right? We do, especially when you're running from one
Yeah,
thing to the next. So I'm with you. And
we
we don't
traveled
know what that is in Europe. Like maybe it's changed. Like I have never seen a mozzarella stick till I got here, and wrapping that with prosciutto was a novelty for me. But you know what? When you're hungry, I get it with some fruit roll. So
yeah, yeah. Well, we went to Colorado and we saw you last summer. We have a travel fridge, so
we do. It's
it's
awesome.
not a cooler, and so I will prep tons of veggies that are in a container, and then my kids are like, "I'm hungry." I'm like, "The veggies and snacks are
And
in
they do well with them.
and then we've got little like popcorn bags and
Yep.
maybe pita chips and things that they can snack on in the car, and we're good to go. And at least that like cuts down on the number of times you gotta stop. You've got stuff in the car if you get stuck in traffic, and it cuts down on the cost. And so if you can prep,
100%.
something that you're eating as you're traveling, I think that that is way better than stopping and eating at every other, McDonald's or fast food joint along the way.
We actually, where we live, but it's hot where you live too. We just don't leave home without a cooler, even if it's just for an hour. There's always water and drinks in there and food for whatever, even if it comes back untouched, it's in there. And of course, the dog food has to go. She has her own water too. Dog has her own little suitcase too, little bag. But yeah, don't leave home without water and food somehow. All right.
Yeah. Well, I was going to add too, as far as like labels, I know my small town grocery store in Three Oaks, Michigan, Harding's, we were going to a reunion with friends I grew up with, and I'm trying to find something I can bring to this little gathering outside, and they didn't have any like pre-cut veggie tray or anything like that. And so I'm like, okay, what do I know my kids are going to eat then? So I'm like, peanut butter and jelly. Let me just get,
Oh
thing of
yeah,
peanut butter, a loaf of bread, and the kids that don't want the macaroni salads and the, all these things. And
things.
so
Yeah.
I'm standing in front of all the jams and jellies, and there were a few that actually had, it was like strawberry jam. I'm like, oh, what's this one? And it used, natural on it. And so I'm reading the label, and they use red 40 like
That's
in the
amazing.
jelly. And I was like, are you serious? Like, so I think my biggest pet peeve as a consumer and as a dietitian is, dyes or not, I get frustrated when we try to make something look like it shouldn't. If it's not
Hmm.
that color, don't make it something else, because I think it's also confusing for children to go, well, then that isn't what I
That's
grew
not,
up
yeah.
eating. I grew up eating like Skippy peanut butter and I loved it, but now I look at the label, I'm like, there's 3 grams of sugar per serving.
Hmm.
Is that necessary? So we're trying to like transform some of these products that are staples in a diet, especially for low income families. Salmon, we're adding color to make it look pinker than it is. I'm like, then that's a red flag for me.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you brought that up with the jams, and I'm amazed. Yeah, I just did not even know. Probably because I don't eat peanut butter and jelly. That's another. I eat Marmite, and you know that. Like, I haven't tried your kids on Marmite. They're like, what? We're coming from the Britain and the British Commonwealth. They may eat Vegemite in Australia, but
Vegemite in
Marmite.
Australia.
But it's like it's a brilliant product. It's B12 rich, people. So yeah, I've never eaten peanut butter and jelly. I just like, but for kids, it's awesome, And then you can actually, I learned from Paul, you can actually toast it, I guess, and then that's cool. So, but it's cool for kids. They get the sweet, and then they get the protein from the peanut butter. I'm all about that and the fat. So it's a good sustenance. Me, I'll
And
have
it's a
Marmite
must.
cheese and cucumber. That's my sandwich.
Yeah, peanut butter jellies are a staple for athletes too.
Yeah, no, I get
That's
it. Yeah.
like pack them in. Where's the Uncrustables? Let's go. I mean, they're in the freezer section. We keep them in our freezer too, where it's like, hey, we're going on a trip real quick, and I'm trying to pack, my kid's little container to eat in the car, and I'm like, here's an Uncrustable. I don't have to do any food prep. Freezer to defrost in 30
No,
minutes.
I
So
think it's brilliant. Yeah, no, it really is. Yep.
absolutely.
All
Um,
right.
what
Anything else
else,
on the
Amanda?
label? We didn't even dig into it. We're going to come back and talk about that more because we have these like really interesting questions from your dad, like, and it's like sort of part two of what should I eat, that we should kind
Yeah.
of roll with again.
Yeah, I think variety is key, but obviously you got to meet your needs with your budget and what's accessible to you. So find the things that are available in your area and culturally relevant because I have plenty of clients that are like, I'm eating a healthy diet, but they eat the same thing every day. And so
That
I'm
is
like,
interesting,
hey,
isn't it?
yeah, and I get it. It makes sense because it keeps things simpler when you don't have to make a lot of decisions. But then I would probably put it on like a monthly rotation and not like a daily like are we changing what we're eating every week? But if we're eating the exact same thing every day, we're kind of missing out on some of the nutrient variety and density.
I wonder too, when I'm talking about like biochemical intelligence, I think our gut has ears, it's a big sensory palace that if you're eating the same thing every day, does your body become tone deaf? I mean, it's just something I'm thinking about outside my mind because my mind would not work like that because I know what, and I think you too, my body will tell me what I need to eat. I mean, we can be like really experimental, like Thai one day and, Indian the next. But there is definitely days where it's like, you got to eat eggs, right? Or you really need to eat some sauerkraut. And you would miss out on that, hearing what your body wants if you eat the same food every day, even though, like you said, it's simpler. So
Mm-hmm.
I think eating, if you can, just watching the change in the season. If you do get stuck eating the same thing every day, at least watch what's in season and make that one change that week. Like asparagus is not in season right now, but it's everywhere. But some of your tropical fruits are, if that's where you're going right now. And all, like I call them, like the Mediterranean Provençal vegetables. So growing up in Europe, like your zucchinis and your eggplant, your tomato, those are all in season right now, and some of your onions as well. So if you do find you're sticking with the same food every day because it's simpler, you are going to be missing out on some key nutrients and polyphenols that your body actually needs. So I
Mm-hmm.
would, if you find yourself there and you just get stuck, that's honestly where I would see like a dietitian just to help you open things up. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are some programs too. Look in your city, like your library, or there might be health orient. The health department might have free presentations with a dietitian where you're getting some of that nutrition education. So even if you don't necessarily see a dietitian one on one, but you're like, I just
That's a
don't
good
know what
idea.
I should be shopping for. I think that that's really helpful. And you might even be able to find some free, meal plans with a SNAP budget online. So I
I
know that we have
agree.
so many good resources out there that just we don't necessarily know about. But I know our library does. The Indianapolis
Oh,
Library
that's
has
good.
all
Yeah, I didn't
kinds
think
of
about
different
that.
education things, and they do have a dietitian or some presentations for that. So
And Sarah, what is, and I know you would know it a lot more in the Midwest, so Cooperative Extension too does, it's affiliated with state universities actually. Used to have some amazing programs. They tend to be
Mm.
more agricultural, but there was always a food and nutrition expert on staff. I'm actually going to check with University of Colorado here and answer my own
I think
question.
Purdue has that.
Yeah,
They
I
have
think Purdue
Purdue
does.
Extension, and they definitely have
Dude.
agricultural stuff going on
Yeah, I
there.
mean, they're cool and lots of free stuff. But the other thing, and maybe we'll kind of get to close this out because we're just like all on a roll here with just our thinking because we're in the food space. But the when you're thinking of amazing resource and working on a budget but getting variety, the Canned Food Alliance, it may have changed its name now, Sarah, but they are and were amazing for combining like canned or even frozen fruit and vegetable products because they are or were the Canned Food Alliance. So obviously they're looking at food that's not in a fresh format as the focus of the recipes. Absolutely amazing. And when I was teaching culinary, when working with healthcare professionals, a whole segment of a culinary workshop will be using their recipes just to showcase that you could put together like canned tangerines with a chipotle sauce and just diced tomatoes, whether they were fresh or not, and you can make the most amazing salsa, which you can then pull out chicken, like frozen chicken or frozen seafood, and you actually have a really flavorful, robust meal that actually talks to your gut and your genes at the same time. So maybe Sarah, I'll look at that right after that and we can just put it in the notes. But just really fabulous, simple recipes. Don't have to be a chef to put that stuff together.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I make a four bean chili that's actually award winning in Texas. So it's beans. They're
Beans.
amazing. But in Texas, if you bring a bean chili in, Texas chili is mostly like meat, and they do not put beans in their chili. And I'm
With a
like,
little bit of bite of the fiber. Oh my gosh.
we went to this chili cook-off. This is a really funny story. Let me tell you this story. So when Greg and I, shortly after we got married, we got invited to this chili cook-off. And we're like, oh, that sounds like fun. So we went and we bought a camp stove. And it was the display model, so it didn't even have like some of the parts were missing. We're like, that's fine. We show up with like a card table, and because we knew my recipe, it didn't have any meat, didn't have to like cook any of it. It was just like cans and go, you know.
All right.
So we show up, and like everybody else has been there for probably a couple of hours, and we just roll in with a card table. And so I make this chili and like, what is this? Like, we don't do that down here. And so we were living in Dallas at the time. So that's how this all happened. My husband has worked for Texas Instruments for 18 years. And so their office is in Dallas. And so we're like, this is a whole thing. This is a whole thing. And I had no idea. And so we make our chili, and they had a couple of areas where you could win prizes or, win best of show or whatever. One of them was presentation. And so I was like, oh, presentation, I'll put some like cilantro and
Yeah,
like
make
some
it
a little
pretty.
sour cream. And I crushed up a couple of Fritos, and I was like, there's our presentation. And so they're like judging it. And then come to find out the presentation was the presentation of your booth. And so the booth was like people have got like a roadkill theme, or they've got, like
No.
a Texas like red theme, or, University of Texas orange
Right,
and go
orange, yeah.
Longhorns. And so like we thought it was like the presentation of like the dish, and it was definitely not. But no, very few people even wanted to try the chili
Isn't that
because
interesting?
it was beans and because it didn't have meat in it. But it won second place in the non-traditional chili, and the first place one was like a white chicken chili. So I felt pretty proud of that. I won
Yeah.
$75, which paid for the camp stove that I had to buy to do the chili for. So this was
There you
like
go.
15 years ago, so it was a
Be
long time
careful
ago.
in Texas if you show up for a chili cook-off with beans and no meat. So that's funny. Yeah,
So the
I
people
get
who
it.
did try it liked it a lot, but
Yeah,
there were plenty of
totally.
people who just said, I'm not eating that and I'm not going to try that. And that makes me sad. You are missing out.
You're missing out on something your kids may love.
Absolutely. Yes.
Cool.
So Anyway, it was good, and this was a great conversation. I think we kind of stripped away some of the genomic stuff today, just to kind of bring it back to like, okay, let's assume you don't even have access or the means to purchase DNA testing to have your genes interpreted, and obviously that's the space that we work in. But we're also dietitians, and we can and do foundational nutrition counseling with our clients and with groups as well. We just have a genomics lens, and so stripping it down a little bit for my sweet dad, to go, okay, these are great conversations, but like, what do I do?
What do I do?
So cute.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
I guess we will tune in next time, and I know we've been teasing the fatigue and mitochondria for like a little
it's
while,
coming.
so
We're going
it's
full on
coming.
with fatigue and mitochondria next time. And
Yes.
just what we're seeing in practice and the why and what we have to do is just critical. That's
Yeah.
going to be
So
an intense conversation, but I'm excited for that one, Sarah.
we'll be back in a more clinical mind next episode,
We
but this
will.
was fun to just kind of chat a little bit more from the foundation. So thanks for
100%.
tuning in, and we will see you next time.
We will. Bye, everyone.